Hello everyone. I'm very happy to have you back on my channel. In the previous episode, we saw Jack and Tutien trying day by day to get through a difficult period, but perhaps everything has not stopped there. What has begun is no longer just small obstacles, but is gradually becoming a chain of pressure, prolonged, silent, yet heavy. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the house remained peaceful as usual. Still those mornings, sunlight slipping through the window, still simple meals, not elaborate, not luxurious, just enough warmth, just enough for one to feel there is still a place to return to. But there was only one person who truly knew that this peace was slowly becoming fragile, not because something happened immediately, not because of a major event, but because invisible things, pressures that could not be seen, were quietly creeping, little by little, into every thought. Jack still went to work, still kept the same routine, unchanged. He still woke up early, still prepared everything, as if life was still on track. He still smiled, still stayed calm in front of Tutien, not revealing anything, still ate simple meals. Lytutien still sat there, still listened, still nodded, as if nothing had changed. But inside was a completely different world, a series of numbers, constantly appearing, constantly repeating. In his mind, amounts of money, not small figures, that could not be ignored, could not be delayed forever. Pressures, with no shape, yet carrying weight, pressing down, day by day, not just once, not just a moment, but continuously, repeating, leaving him without even a moment to breathe. The company no longer had new orders, no more inquiry calls, no more opportunities opening up. Like before, everything slowed down. Old contracts that once felt like support became another concern. Delayed payments, extended timelines, with no clear deadline. Partners kept postponing, not refusing, but not resolving either. Their responses, vague, uncertain, only prolonging the anxiety. Meanwhile, expenses still had to be paid. They did not wait, could not be postponed, could not be negotiated. Labor costs were a responsibility that could not be cut. Material costs were the foundation that could not be missing. Operating costs were the condition for survival that could not be abandoned. Not a single thing could stop, not a single expense could disappear. Everything was still there, like a loop with no end. Jack had tried, not just once. He called the bank, holding on to hope, even if it was small. Once, he waited for a different answer. Twice, he tried to explain, tried to present his case. Then many times, so many that even he could no longer remember how many calls had been made. But the answer remained the same, unchanged, no different. At the moment your application does not meet the requirements, high risk, unable to disperse. Those words were not harsh, not aggressive, but firm, leaving no room for hope. He stayed silent, did not react, did not argue, did not try to persuade further, because he understood. It was policy, it was how things worked. No one was wrong, no one was at fault, but that also meant a truth he could not avoid. He had no way back, no options left behind to return to, no backup plan to stay safe, only the road ahead. But ahead, nothing was clear, and in that silence, between the calm outside and the pressure within, something was slowly forming, quietly, gradually, but surely, continuing what had already begun, an opening up fate, far more unpredictable. One evening, the space fell silent, as if all the familiar sounds of life had withdrawn from that small room. Jack sat alone, no one beside him, no words spoken, only the light from his phone screen, casting onto a face that could no longer remain as calm as before. That light was not enough to illuminate the entire room, but it was enough to reveal the exhaustion, the heaviness, and the thoughts that were piling up with no way out. His phone contacts displayed name after name, familiar, close, yet none of them were people he could turn to at this moment. Then, a name appeared, not new, but not a name he wanted to see right now. A name he had once deliberately avoided, a name he had told himself he would never contact again. But now, it was there, right in front of him, like a final option. Jack paused, not just for a few seconds, but for a long time. His finger lightly touched the screen, then stopped, not pressing, not pulling away, just staying there, as if that small action was deciding something much bigger. In his mind, it wasn't just hesitation, but layers of thoughts, overlapping, intertwined, with no end. He understood. If he made the call, everything would change. There would be no going back. No more days that, though difficult, were still within limits he could control. Once the call was made, everything would move in another direction. A direction he had never wanted to step into. But the prolonged silence did not bring another way out. In the end, after all the pauses, all the thoughts, all the moments his finger touched and withdrew, he still pressed call. The connection tone sounded short, steady, nothing unusual, but each ring made his heart beat heavier. The other side answered, not slowly, not surprised, as if this call had already been expected. How much do you need? No greeting, no asking why, no concern at all. Just one question, direct, short, and enough to understand that the relationship between them was reduced to one thing: money. Jack did not answer immediately. He stayed silent, not because he didn't know what to say, but because the number he was about to speak was not simple. It wasn't just an amount of money, but a decision, a step, with no turning back. After a few seconds, he spoke. A number. Not small, not easy, and not something anyone could easily accept. On the other end, there was no strong reaction. No surprise. No follow-up questions. Just a brief silence. Then a simple reply. All right. Just one word, but enough to confirm that everything had begun. But immediately after came another sentence. Not long, not explained, yet carrying a very clear meaning. But you know the rules. No dilas. No need for more. No need to emphasize. No need to explain further. Yet every word carried enough weight to make it clear that behind that agreement was not help, but a binding, a boundary that once crossed, there would be no way back. The call ended. Short. No extra words. No unnecessary details. The screen went dark. The room fell back into darkness as before. But now, everything was different. The silence was no longer the same. It was no longer emptiness, but the presence of something that had begun to form. Jack remained seated, not moving, not speaking, just staring into the empty space ahead. He knew the door that had just opened was not a simple opportunity, but a path, accompanied by things he could not yet fully see. Path where every step would come at a cost, but he had stepped onto it, and there was no turning back. The next day, Jack returned home. Everything seemed the same. No clear changes, no signs that anything had happened. He still talked, still lived, still kept the familiar rhythm. His words were normal. His actions were as usual. Nothing different on the outside, but inside was another story, a truth only he knew, pressure that could not be shared, a decision that could not be undone. And from that moment, even though everything around him remained the same, deep inside, something had begun to change, quietly, but clearly, slowly, but unstoppable. And from here on, the days ahead would no longer be as simple as before. As for Tutien, she continued her familiar routines, repeating day after day, with no changes, no signs that life was turning in a different direction. In the morning, she went out to the garden, her steps gentle. All of it were small tasks, yet part of a long process of persistence and hope. She still believed, as long as she kept trying, as long as she didn't give up, everything would gradually get better. Not immediately, not overnight, but it would come, slowly and surely. A simple belief, but enough to keep her moving forward. She didn't know that behind her, there were things happening that she was completely unaware of. Jack was still there, still present in her life, as usual, still talking, still caring, still keeping everything in its familiar state. But deep inside, he had made a decision, one that didn't just affect him, but would pull along the entire family. A decision, silent, yet powerful enough to push everything closer to a very fragile line, a boundary that once crossed would never be the same again. In the following days, everything was no longer as perfectly quiet as before. Jack's phone began to receive calls with no names, no identification, just unfamiliar numbers, appearing, then disappearing after each connection. No long conversations, no unnecessary words, just short sentences, enough to remind him the messages were the same. Not long, no emotion, no roundabout wording, on time, sentence, short, but carrying pressure that could not be ignored. Don't make us remind you. No need for further explanation, yet enough to understand that behind those words was not patience, but a limit that had already been set. Jack read them, did not reply, but could not ignore them. Every time the phone lit up was another moment that heaviness returned. The nights that followed were no longer times for rest, no longer moments to recover. For the next day, they became endless stretches of time with no end. Jack began to lose sleep, not because he wanted to stay awake, but because he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, it wasn't silence, the thought that wouldn't stop. No longer calculations, no longer searching for solutions, but fear. Fear of what was coming, fear of things he could not control. He lay there, in a familiar space, yet the feeling was no longer the same. Beside him, Tien still slept deeply after a long day of hard work. Her face, peaceful, with no signs of worry, no pressure showing, a kind of calm, completely opposite to what was happening inside him. Jack looked at her for a long time, not just a glance, but a gaze filled with thoughts. He didn't dare to speak, didn't dare to share, not because he didn't trust her, but because he knew, once spoken, everything would change. This peace would no longer exist. And he didn't want to be the one to break it. But silence could not last forever, because what was coming would not stop, would not wait. And then, one afternoon, With no warning, no preparation at all, everything began to move closer. Tutien was at the farm, still doing her usual work, still maintaining the same rhythm as the days before. At home, no one was there. The space was quiet, and within that silence, a strange car stopped in front of the gate. Not loud, not drawing attention, but enough to create an unusual feeling. The car door opened. Men stepped out, not hurried, not rushed, just steps, slow, but firm. They didn't say much, didn't call anyone's name, didn't make any loud sounds. They simply looked around, observing every detail, every corner, as if they were confirming something. Their eyes held no emotion, no curiosity, only coldness, a kind of cold that didn't need to be obvious, yet was enough to make others feel it. The surrounding space remained the same. Nothing had changed, but their presence was enough to break all the peace before. The danger was no longer distant, no longer just thoughts, no longer messages or phone calls. It had appeared right in front of them, and from that moment, everything could not return to how it was. Would Jack be able to handle things in time before everything spiraled out of control? While Tutien, when she learns the truth, stay calm or be pulled into a storm she never imagined. And that money, the choice Jack made when he had no other way, would it become a way out or the reason to drag everything even deeper? A major turning point was approaching, no longer a prediction, no longer a possibility, but something certain to happen. Stay tuned for the next episode.
Xin chào mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Nay thì mình đưa đến với mọi người video về câu chuyện và tự tiên và giáp nha mọi người. Thì như mọi người cũng đã biết thì tự tiên và giáp hiện tại thì đang ở trong giai đoạn khá là khó khăn, nhất là về kinh tế, khi cả hai đều không thể nào mà có thể giống như là vượt qua được cái giai đoạn này. Vậy thì liệu mọi chuyện tiếp theo sẽ như thế nào? Vậy thì tự tiên và giáp có thể vượt qua được những khó khăn hiện tại hay không? Và liệu rằng điều gì sẽ xảy ra tiếp theo trên con đường tình yêu của họ? Thì mời mọi người đón xem ở trong những các tập tiếp theo nha. Và trong tập này thì có một điểm là Jack đã chọn đến con đường cùng, tức là đi vay tiền ở bên tín dụng đen. Vậy thì liệu kết quả tiếp theo sẽ như thế nào, và liệu Tử Tiên và Jack có cùng nhau vượt qua được khó khăn này hay không? Hãy cùng đón xem vào những tập sau mọi người nhé. Tạm biệt mọi người, hẹn gặp lại trong những video sau.